Nostalgia. Nostalgia was originally classified as a psychiatric brain disorder. Swiss physician Johannes Hofer coined the term in 1688 to describe the potentially lethal longing of mercenaries for their mountain homes. Patients exhibited symptoms of fainting, high fever, and chronic indigestion. It was not a warm, fuzzy feeling. It was a physical ailment treated with leeches, stomach pumping, and opium. Today, global corporations use this historical sickness as a high-efficiency sedative for the consumer masses. They systematically repackage the 1980s and 1990s every 5 years to maximize shareholder value. They sell you neon lights, pixelated graphics, and synthesizer soundtracks to mask the accelerating decay of modern infrastructure. Your brain releases massive doses of dopamine when it recognizes familiar patterns from your formative years. The neurological reward system cannot distinguish between a genuine memory and a manufactured brand identity. You are not purchasing a physical product or a functional tool. You are purchasing a temporary chemical hallucination of a stable childhood that likely never existed in the way you remember it. Advertising agencies employ behavioral psychologists to map these triggers. They target the hippocampus to bypass the prefrontal cortex where critical thinking occurs. The vintage aesthetic serves as a psychological anchor. It moors the consumer to a perceived era of safety. This prevents them from questioning the rising costs or the diminishing quality of the actual goods being delivered. We are a civilization currently obsessed with looking backward to avoid the sight of our own future. The past is the most profitable product in the current marketplace. Scarcity. Scarcity is a primitive survival mechanism designed to prevent starvation in resource-poor environments. In 1975, researchers Wurtzel, Lee, and Adewole proved that people value cookies more when they are in short supply. They presented subjects with 2 jars. One contained 10 cookies, and the other contained only 2. The subjects consistently rated the cookies in the near-empty jar as more desirable and more expensive. This is the scarcity heuristic. It is a cognitive shortcut that equates availability with quality. The diamond industry perfected this scam in the late 19th century. De Beers consolidated African mines to control the global supply. They created a synthetic shortage of common carbon crystals. They then marketed these rocks as rare symbols of eternal love. Diamonds are objectively abundant, but subjectively priceless. Modern e-commerce platforms utilize high-frequency scarcity triggers to induce panic. You see banners claiming, "Only 3 items left," or 15 people are looking at this room. These are often algorithmically generated lies. They are designed to spike your cortisol levels. High cortisol shuts down the rational parts of the brain. You stop comparing prices and start clicking buttons to alleviate the fear of losing out. Black Friday events utilize the same biological hardware. Retailers create a violent environment where limited stock leads to physical confrontation. This reinforces the perceived value of the goods through social competition. The goal is to make the act of acquisition more important than the utility of the object. We have evolved to fight over scraps. The modern economy just provides cleaner scrap metal. Social proof. Social proof is the psychological phenomenon where people mirror the behavior of others to reflect correct behavior. It is rooted in the evolutionary need for tribal safety. If the herd is running away, you do not stop to identify the predator. You run. The Solomon Asch conformity experiments of 1951 demonstrated this with terrifying clarity. Participants were asked to identify the longest line on a card. When actors gave the wrong answer, 75% of the real subjects eventually agreed with the obvious lie. They chose social harmony over visual reality. This is why television sitcoms used canned laughter recorded in the 1950s. Charles Douglas created the laugh box to simulate a crowd. Even if the joke is terrible, you are biologically programmed to laugh. The digital economy is built on the ruins of individual judgment. Amazon reviews, Yelp stars, and influencer endorsements are the modern equivalent of the laugh box. We outsource our preferences to an anonymous collective that is easily manipulated by bot farms and paid shills. The bestseller tag on a book or a verified checkmark on a profile functions as a bypass for due diligence. We assume that the majority possesses a hidden wisdom that we lack. This creates massive bubbles in every sector from fashion to cryptocurrency. People buy into a trend simply because the trend exists. It is a self-reinforcing loop of imitation. The cost of being an outlier is high. The cost of being a mindless follower is often the total loss of your bank account. Sunk cost. The sunk cost fallacy is the irrational tendency to continue an endeavor once an investment in money, effort, or time has been made. It is also known as the Concorde fallacy. The British and French governments spent billions of pounds on a supersonic jet that they knew was a commercial disaster. They refused to stop because they had already spent too much to quit. Their pride was more expensive than their treasury. Humans are biologically incapable of walking away from a losing hand. Behavioral economics calls this loss aversion. The pain of losing $100 is twice as potent as the joy of gaining $100. We would rather throw good money after bad than admit we were wrong in the first place. This is the foundation of the casino industry. Slot machines are designed to exploit this specific glitch in the human operating system. Near misses release more dopamine than actual wins. The machine tells you that you were almost there. You feel that the next spin will finally justify the previous 3 hours of losses. The same logic applies to toxic relationships and stagnant careers. We stay because we have already suffered. We believe that more suffering will eventually pay a dividend. Video games use this through grinding mechanics. They force you to perform repetitive tasks to earn digital assets. Once you have invested 500 hours into a virtual world, the prospect of leaving becomes a psychological trauma. The platform now owns your time because you are afraid to waste your past. We build our own prisons out of wasted hours. Reciprocity. Reciprocity is a deep-seated social obligation to return a favor. Anthropologists argue that this was the primary glue of early human civilization. If a neighbor shared their kill, you owed them your next harvest. It created a web of mutual debt that ensured survival. Robert Cialdini famously analyzed the Hare Krishna technique. They would give travelers a flower in the airport and then ask for a donation. Most people hated the flower but felt an overwhelming psychological pressure to pay for it. The gift is a weapon. It creates an unasked-for debt that demands immediate settlement. The person who gives first controls the terms of the exchange. In the corporate world, this is known as content marketing. You are given free information to trigger your debt response. The free sample in a grocery store is not an act of charity. It is a targeted strike on your sense of fairness. When you accept the piece of cheese, your brain enters a state of mild imbalance. You feel the need to restore the social equilibrium by purchasing the full package. Studies show that even a small, unsolicited favor can double the success rate of a subsequent sales pitch. This is why lobbyists buy expensive dinners for politicians. The dinner is worth $500, but the legislative favor is worth millions. The scale of the return does not have to match the scale of the gift. The brain just wants the debt cleared. We are a species of bookkeepers. The smartest predators always give you something for free first. Fear of missing out. Fear of missing out, or FOMO, is a form of social anxiety. It is the persistent perception that others might be having rewarding experiences from which one is absent. Patrick J. McGinnis coined the term in 2004, but the biological drive is ancient. It is located in the amygdala, the brain's alarm center. In a hunter-gatherer society, being left out of a feast or a ritual meant death. Modern social media has hijacked this survival instinct. We are now exposed to the curated highlights of billions of people simultaneously. We compare our mundane reality to a distorted, filtered version of everyone else's life. This leads to a constant state of low-grade panic and inadequacy. The digital world is a broadcast of things you are not doing. The architecture of the internet is designed to maximize this anxiety. Infinite scroll and push notifications keep the brain in a state of hypervigilance. You check your phone not for information, but for relief. You are looking for proof that the world hasn't moved on without you. Asa Raskin, the inventor of the infinite scroll, compared it to a bottomless bowl of soup. You never reach the end, so you never stop consuming. This is the variable ratio reinforcement schedule used in B.F. Skinner's behavioral experiments. Like pigeons in a box, we peck at the screen for the rare pellet of social validation. Every notification is a potential threat or a potential reward. The uncertainty is what keeps you hooked. We are terrified of standing still. Authority. The authority trigger is the tendency to obey people in positions of perceived power. This was demonstrated by the Milgram experiment in 1961. Stanley Milgram showed that average citizens would deliver 450-volt electric shocks to a stranger just because a man in a lab coat told them to. The subjects were visibly distressed, but 65% of them continued until the end. We are trained from birth to defer to titles, uniforms, and certifications. This is a survival shortcut. We assume that someone with a degree or a badge has already done the thinking for us. Marketing departments exploit this by hiring actors to play doctors in commercials. They use technical jargon and white coats to lend scientific legitimacy to useless products. Expertise is often just a costume. The halo effect further complicates this trigger. We assume that people who are successful in one area are experts in all areas. We listen to tech billionaires for medical advice and actors for political strategy. The brain associates high status with high intelligence. Luxury brands use this to sell overpriced watches and cars. They associate their products with historical figures or elite athletes. You are not buying a timekeeping device. You are buying a proximity to authority. You want to be perceived as someone who belongs in the room where the decisions are made. This drive is so strong that people will bankrupt themselves to look like they have money. We respect the uniform more than we respect the person inside it. Obedience is the path of least resistance. Commitment and consistency. Commitment and consistency involve the desire to appear consistent with what we have already done. Once we take a stand or make a choice, we face personal and interpersonal pressures to behave accordingly. In 1966, Friedman and Fraser used the foot in the door technique to prove this. They asked homeowners to place a tiny sign in their window. Later, they asked those same people to place a massive, ugly billboard in their yard. Those who agreed to the small sign were 4 times more likely to agree to the large one. They had already committed to the identity of being civic-minded. Changing their mind would create cognitive dissonance. The brain avoids this mental pain at all costs. We would rather be wrong and consistent. This trigger is the foundation of brand loyalty and political polarization. Once you buy into a specific ecosystem, like an operating system or a political party, you become its volunteer defense attorney. You ignore the flaws and highlight the benefits to justify your initial choice. Changing your opinion feels like a betrayal of your former self. Car salesmen use the lowball technique by offering a great price and then raising it after the customer has committed to the purchase. The customer rarely walks away because they have already mentally owned the car. Their identity has shifted. We are creatures of habit who value the illusion of a stable personality more than the pursuit of truth. We brand ourselves like cattle.